to the podcast, the Pokemon podcast that uns all around the meta.
What is this meme? I do not know this meme that you are referencing.
You don't know this? How do you not know? We literally... Okay, never mind. If you do not know, you'll find out later. I'll tell you about it later in the episode. But thanks for listening. My name is Jake, if you do not know who I am, with my co-host, Sean. Sean, how are you doing right now?
I'm good. I think we are both in a similar camp of life is busy, Jake. Life is busy.
Life is busy. My college just had homecoming, so if you were wondering where last week's episode was, that's where it was.
It was a homecoming, you know.
It was a homecoming indeed, and Sean and I are very busy people. But this week is a great week because Salt Lake City Regionals happened along with plenty of other news. So rain or shine, we're gonna give it to you, all of it, even the jokes in the podcast that revolves around the meta. But Sean, first, what do we got to talk about first?
Well, before we get to the 5-star review, I do want to say a little tidbit of like trivia that I found out. Team Rocket, whenever they blast off or pose or whatever, did you know that one of them or both of them make the shape of an R in the anime and in the games, I believe?
When they like introducing themselves?
Yeah, when they pose and stuff like that. Apparently they regularly make the shape of an R. I did not know this. Yeah,
it's like every single time they're like, Jesse, James.
This is me, where like as a child, like the fact that it's an R over my head.
I'm pretty sure there are episodes, Sean, where like they make the R and then the R appears like right behind them or in front of them. Are you telling me you missed it after this long?
I never learned how to read, Jake.
Oh my gosh. Anyways, good thing we know everything about Pokemon cards and not the alphabet, because we've got some excellent stuff today, including a 5-star review. We're back to it in the 5-star reviews. This one being from Dom the Bomb 2416. 5-star review, best Pokemon TCG podcast. I am making a Pokemon TCG club at my middle school, and I'm hoping to play this at the club. Cutting to the chase, I love the podcast. Well, my friend, I hope you have an excellent club. Hopefully you got a great group of friends that just love playing Pokemon cards. And thank you so much for listening to the podcast.
That's awesome.
Sean?
That's a super cool club. You know what? If you're listening, you are all awesome.
You are all awesome.
Yeah.
And I wish I had a club in school, but I didn't really get into Pokemon cards until I was like just about to get out of college, I think.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I've told this story on the pod before, but I was a Pokemon card grifter, Jake. When I was
What is a grifter?
A young boy. I had a lot of Pokemon cards, and I went to summer camp with kids who didn't know enough about Pokemon cards.
Oh my gosh, you stole from kids.
I didn't steal. I was a child as well, Jake. Okay. I was just a business child.
Police!
I was one of those kids that would like grift other kids out of their good cards sometimes.
I still don't even know what grift is, but I think by context clues, I just know that you're a criminal.
Yeah, it's like to con, but like you can't be a criminal if you're also a child. That's fine.
That is totally not a true statement. You know. Anyways, we've got a lot to talk about on the podcast, including, Sean, an update on Pokemon TCG Live. Sean, when was the last time you thought about Pokemon TCG Live?
Right now, which is too soon.
Truly, but Sean, what's the big new stuff coming in from Pokemon TCG Live?
I mean, the main things that you'll see, and it's probably, I think, already live from what I heard. But
yes, I believe it's already happening.
Yes, it's already out, but they have like animations in the battle area. I'm playing it here for those of the viewers on YouTube, but for those listening, there's like grass and lava and a water theme, and it just kind of covers like the battlefield area, which is like, hey, it's the bare minimum. That's cool. Hearthstone, Magic, all of the other clients have had something like this for years and years, but you know what? It's a slow process maybe. And maybe, Jake, one day the stadium you play will be what impacts the field that you are playing on. Wouldn't that be cool? Just like in the Yu-Gi-Oh anime.
Just like in Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know if Pokemon wants to be like Yu-Gi-Oh, but
I mean,
there are some other things as well with this. This was a lot of the program visuals that were changed, updated, things like that. A lot of that has to do in response to the player feedback that they had back up in the survey in August. I believe in this podcast we talked about if you want improvements on Pokemon TCG Live, fill out the survey. I believe we also put it in the show notes description and stuff like that. So there's a lot of interesting things. I know they sped up the game as well in terms of the animations and stuff. I think one of our big gripes was like, the clock was winding down as your Marnie was doing the animation, and then all of a sudden, because of the animation, it'd shave off like 10 seconds, and then you would lose your turn just because of that. So they sped up the game very, very well. I know a lot of people were happy about that. It's still not perfect by any means, but Sean, it's really cool to see that there are a lot of improvements on this right now.
Yeah, I mean, the animation piece, I will give the development team of Pokemon a little bit of slack here. Hearthstone has, from time to time, had animation issues where, like, if you play a certain number of cards, this is actually a semi-cheat people used to use, you could play cards that would force animations to run. And while it wouldn't automatically take time off the clock, what it would do is by the time it got over to your opponent's turn, they would only have like 2 seconds left to play their turn.
Oh.
And yeah, like, so a lot of games that have clocks have had these issues. So that's not really, that's not a unique to Pokemon thing. So I will give them some leeway there. But I think the big thing that most people I've seen still concerned about is the crafting system. Being that it's like a little too stingy. I know everybody says like, oh, but you could just use the celebrations code hack. And like, while that's good, it's always important.
It only works for a little bit.
It only works for your first 400 packs, which is a lot. But after that, you got to just open up a whole new set. And there's no set that's going to have that same level of value. So I will see if the crafting system gets even more generous over time, because I think as it currently stands, it's a little frustrating, particularly for content creators.
Yes, short term, it's fine, but long term, a lot of people are saying that long term just does not fit. But the one thing that I just want them to do, but they haven't done it yet, Sean, flip your opponent's Pokemon around. The Pokemon in the game are still facing you on the entire board. So like all of your opponent's Pokemon look confused. It's just, it's one of those things that, like, I get it. The casual players won't really mind. The veteran players probably don't, you probably don't think that they're confused, but like, it just hurts to watch. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah, this is one where, like, I really don't know. We both have the bias of having played IRL and the original client, where like everything is arranged one way. I don't know. Maybe if you brought a new player in, they would really love that. But
here's the thing that I think, the way that I see the benefits of having the cards facing you is if you could read the cards.
But there's too small.
Right? Like, yeah, they're too small. So like, there's no point. So why wouldn't you just mimic like a real
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And
I don't know. I'm not on the dev team.
To your point about confusion, right? Like, there is like all of the cards. I don't know, listeners, I don't know if you know this, if you haven't played IRL a lot or in a while, the way that you're supposed to turn the cards, if it's facing normally, the Pokemon is normal, obviously. If you turn it to the left, so like if you're going counterclockwise, always go counterclockwise, turn it to the left, that's A for asleep, right? Turn it one more time, another 90 degrees, so now it's backwards, that's C for confused. And then you turn it again, that's P for paralyzed. So you can always go in alphabetical order, ACP. And then, so yeah, little trick if you don't know which direction is asleep or paralyzed. That's really the main difference, but yeah.
It's just like, oh gosh. And like, I know they have the little animation of the confusion. It's like, the birds, but it just doesn't feel right throughout the rest of the way. But it is the beginning, at least they're acknowledging. It seems a lot like in previous, with Pokemon PTCGO, there was not a lot of acknowledgement, communication, things like that. It was just things kind of happen. So we'll see as it continues to come out. I don't believe it's fully out yet. I think it's still in like the Canadian locked beta, which
it's in a few more countries, I think now.
Well, I mean, if you're playing it right now, more than likely you're using a VPN to get to it. But
it's true.
So nothing's really stopping you at this point. But also get a ranked ladder. There's still no real ranked ladder in there. I know a lot of people are mad about that, but
yeah,
you know, it is what it is, Sean. But going across the pond, Ryan, what's going on over there?
Well, Jake, inflation. Okay, inflation is going on. The price of everything is going up, and also I will say, the yen in recent months has been really struggling, especially against things like the dollar. And what ends up happening, right, is because everything is a global economy. You can't pay for everything purely in your own currency. So Japan has decided to increase the prices of their future sets, starting with the Scarlet and Violet series. So I'm assuming that will be whatever set comes out after Paradigm Shift. So
I think you're right.
Yeah. So it won't be anything probably. It may not be anything this year, or if it is, it's at the very end of the year. But yeah, they're going up. I think it's prices will increase 5 to 10%, with some products going up as much as 25%. What goes up? What goes up 25%? I'm looking at this now. We have numbers.
There's a lot of numbers, Sean, and let me tell you, I have a sport management degree of touchdowns and restocking toilet paper in bathrooms, so the math is not on my side on this one. But I will say, if you're looking at these prices, in terms of the, like, you're watching on YouTube or Spotify or something like that, a lot of people, when they just talk about just rough estimations, a lot of people say, like, 100 yen is $1.
Yeah, roughly.
Or is that right?
I mean, that's how I always thought about it. But like, let's just say yen to dollar. Oh my.
So maybe hold on, throw exactly what I said out the window. So.
Oh my, it's really bad right now, Jake. It used to be 100 yen was $1.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, it is very. Maybe we don't want to use that estimate anymore. Anyways,
oh my, it's 148 yen to the dollar. Oh my,
148 yen to the dollar. Oh gosh. Okay. Anyways, but prices are still going up in Japan, and to be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if they started going up in the States as well, or like other areas. I mean, we already see like card shops, like secondhand shops, selling at a little bit higher prices. So it comes to the point of like, when does, Target and when does Walmart and when does all the Barnes and Noble start selling $5 a pack?
I almost don't. I don't know though, because like I said, Japan, like we're seeing 148 yen to the dollar. That's crazy. So yeah. You think what used to be one booster pack used to cost roughly $1.50, let's say, is now, like if you use the old prices for Sword and Shield packs, is now just maybe like $1.10, which is a huge loss, in absolute value of what you're getting out of it. So I think they say it has to do with material and distribution costs, which like that's true because they have to buy those things probably from a different country, which means the dollar, the value of their yen is making it more expensive, but really it's the value of the yen. I don't think that the U.S. or other regions will have the same issue because especially TPCI in the U.S., now we're U.S. based, they did buy the print group, Millennium Print Group.
Oh, they did actually. You're right. We did talk about that.
Yeah. So they will be able to better, I think, control some of those costs. So yeah, I don't think we have to worry too much just yet. That's my gut. I could be very wrong.
I'd be interested to see how like a Japanese Pokemon card collector feels, like an American or Australian or somebody that's not in Japan, because I know that demographic, that market is huge, of people who love collecting Japanese Pokemon cards specifically and exporting those. So it'll be interesting.
Yes.
So to say the least. But Sean, what's the most interesting in my opinion?
What is that, Jake?
It is the results from the regional, Sean, the Salt Lake City regional in Utah, where there were 4 Reggie decks in the top 8. Do you still not understand my joke?
I don't. Please tell me.
How do you not know this? The Reggies go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
It's the Reggie podcast.
I haven't watched the anime with Reggies.
Oh boy, just listen to the Reggies make noise. Look up
all I
Reggie
know is, like, isn't there like
battle cry.
Isn't there like a Reggie rock that goes like Reggie rock?
No, you need to look it up after this podcast and then film your reaction and tweet it out, because holy smokes, you could not be more wrong. Anyways, in this top 8 that you see right here of the Salt Lake City regionals, there were 837 players overall. So not the 1,000, right, that we've seen in the last couple events, but still a very big number. And Salt Lake City, Utah, I feel like out west, West usually has like smaller events. Not necessarily smaller, but smaller than like a Midwest event or like an Eastern event.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that just the population density between the East Coast and also the Midwest, also, even though it's not so dense, is a lot of Pokemon players that live in the Midwest. Talking about the Ohio region, basically.
Yeah. And also, like, this was probably fall break for a lot of people, too. So I bet plane tickets were not super cheap, if I had to take a guess. But this top 8 of players who did make the trip, there was one Palkia and Teleon still kicking in the mix. We had the 4 Reggies right there, 4th through 7th. I believe Azul, Grant, and Caleb all had the same list on the same team. I don't know if Drew Kennett was part of that, but Drew Kennett making another top 8 appearance. The Madman, the Mad Lad. 3rd place was a Giratina Lost Zone deck. 2nd place, Sean, this is slightly surprising, I feel like. Flying Pikachu Arceus.
Yeah.
Making its comeback.
Yeah, we should take a look at that list, because I feel like there's like even more than just Pika.
I didn't get to watch a ton of this event just simply because homecoming for my college, I was a little busy, but I did get to catch the like finals match. I did get to watch it as I was writing stories, and it's a pretty cool list. But the coolest list, Sean, in this top 8 is the winner. It's Arceus Goodra V-Star. Our Goodra made it here on the podcast, Sean. We did it.
Yep. As somebody, I think, on Twitter said, let's go.
Let's go. But Sean, which list do you want to look at first? Or do you want to look at some other things first before we get into it?
Let's look at the Goodra list. I think, how do you pronounce this human's name? I have no clue. Is it Hale?
They're American, so I would say Hale Obernolte.
Okay.
Obernolte.
That's what we're going to go with.
I don't know.
Please send
I think I had a friend with the last name of Hale, and it was spelled like that. So if it's not correct, I'm so sorry. But anyways, this Goodra list right here, this Arceus V-Star Goodra V-Star list is kind of what you'd expect it in terms of the attackers. You know, much like the other Arceus V-Star lists that are paired up with a Pokemon. They use Arceus V-Star, they power up their other Pokemon that they got going on in there, and then the other Pokemon really just does the back half of the game. You've got a Radiant Gardevoir in there as your Radiant Pokemon of choice, because what Goodras usually like to do is prevent damage, heal off damage, things like that, and that's exactly what this list does.
Yep. Heavy heals. You got 4 Hyper Potions in this list, 3 Crystal Caves. Hyper Potion, you discard 2 energy, you heal 120. Crystal Cave, once during your turn, one of your Metal or Dragon Pokemon can heal 30 damage. I think it's the active, right? Or no, it's just any.
Yeah, it's any Pokemon on the field with the Crystal Cave. And so with the double turbos, as well, you're using an Arceus list, right?
Yeah.
And so attaching the double turbos to Goodra, we've mentioned this several times in the past, but if you do not know, Hyper Potion and double turbo energies are a great combo because you can attach double turbo energy, Hyper Potion, all that damage off, and then, well, get rid of the double turbo energy, and that's that. You know, you can still kick. What is really cool about this list, though, in my opinion, is something that we talked about in previous weeks after events. It's the Colress engine, Sean.
Yep.
This is not a Lost Zone deck. This is not a Lost Zone box or engine. But like we kind of talked about at the end of the last couple events, Colress's experiment is becoming a top tier draw supporter card.
Yep. Yeah, it's yeah, we said it before, but like just a raw, it's basically a draw 5 and you got to get rid of 2 forever. But who cares? You know, like half the cards in this deck.
More often than not, out of the 5 cards, you're going to get one that you don't need.
Exactly. There will, having played enough games now with Colress decks, there's always going to be an awkward set of 5. It happens. But a really, a smart player, a player who really understands their deck and the matchup, can kind of figure out what cards they are willing to get rid of. And yeah, with a deck like Goodra, you don't want to be shuffling stuff to the bottom with Marnie. You don't want to be getting rid of stuff with research. And so just drawing 5, you might be able to hit a hyper potion and a double turbo exactly when you need it. Boom, boom, you're good to go. You don't have to get rid of anything in your hand. Yeah, it's I think Colress is. I'll be interested to see what Pokemon prints in the next few sets. I don't know how much Lost Zone support they're going to give, how much more they're going to give. But
it seems pretty powerful already.
Yeah, and like in terms of a raw draw engine, right? Like it's just good. It's just the fact that people are like, I prefer that over research is insane. Because
research has how many times has research not been meta?
Yeah.
Like there's only one professor's research in this list.
Yeah, and to be honest, like it's a good card, but like I don't even know why. Like, do you have it there in case you have a really terrible hand and you need to Starbirth? And you get like, I can Starbirth, grab the research, and see a fresh 7. Like that's I think the only time that gets played.
It's pretty wild, especially, another supporter edition that's in this list that I think is really, really cool. We've seen this supporter paired with Arceus before, and looking at Goodra as well in its attack cost of being a water energy, Melanie is very prevalent in this list, having 3 Melanies in here. So I thought that was really, really cool to see this supporter kind of come back. We've thought about it and just like in Palkia decks, things like that, Kyurem decks, but now we're seeing it back in Arceus with Goodra.
Yeah, no, it's a really good supporter for this deck as well. So, yeah, deck is super straightforward. I think the biggest question you'll always have to ask is in the matchup, like how are you hitting the numbers you need to hit, and how are you preventing your opponent from getting those numbers? Like that is where I think this deck gets big brain, is like really understanding the math for like not just 1 turn ahead, but like 2 or 3 turns ahead.
I think one of the ways that it does that, though, Sean, is that big parasol in that list. If you do not remember big parasol, as long as the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot, prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to all of your Pokemon. So Sableye Lost Box that is not in this top 8, mind you, and was a really, really good deck before this event. It is now just obstructed just like that. And honestly, Goodra can heal a lot of that damage off anyways.
Also, Giratina V-Star's V-Star attack that automatically knocks you out.
That is true. Yes, because the knockout, the automatic knockout is an effect of the attack. That's a really good point I didn't think about.
Yep. Sneaky. So you're basically like your other big hit deck out there. Just can't really get through. So yeah, it was interesting. So like one thing I'll say is the Goodra had a really awesome time when they got to top 8 because, as Jake was saying, and we'll go back now, there was 4 Reggies in the top 8. And Goodra I really think Goodra has a good time against those decks because you're not hitting it for weakness, so you don't get any advantage there.
Dragon has no weakness.
Yep. You're going to do a decent amount of damage, but not really ever enough to get through. So if they can just outlast you, the whole advantage of being a single prize deck kind of falls away. So
especially because, you would think, oh, maybe it's got one attacker like Regigigas. Regigigas only gets the extra 150 damage when it's a V Max
yeah.
Pokemon. So there's no opportunity to hit anything above like 200, I think, in this list.
And then you less 80, so it's 120, which is a 3-shot. And if you're trying to 3-shot Goodras, you're gonna lose. That's not gonna work well for you.
It's not very good for your prize trade on that. So that was the winning deck. Sean, do you want to look at that cheeky little Pikachu deck that's going on over there?
Yeah, Jake, tell me what's going on here?
So in here, you've got your Arceus V-Star, right? And your Flying Pikachu. We've seen it before. We see it again. They got your Bibarels in there because your Bibarel is a great draw engine. Of course, you've got your Drapion V because you gotta beat Mew, right? And there's only one easy way to beat Mew. But what's very curious in here is two things, in my opinion. One, the Radiant Gardevoir. I think that is a very, very cheeky card for this list, and I think I know the reason why on that. I think it's because of Reggie.
Yeah? Is the Reggie not doing enough damage after the Gardevoir?
Wait, oh no, there's no Big Charm in this list. So I don't know actually what the... There's math that works perfectly if you just take 20 away, but maybe it's like Palkia and stuff.
Yeah.
Palkia and Kyurem.
Yeah, and maybe like Giratina. So like if you could just negate just the tiniest bit.
Oh, doesn't Giratina do 280?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that automatically right there just knocks away, the ability to just one-hit KO the Arceus V-Star. Maybe that's the big thing.
Yeah, that's fair. And so...
But anyways...
Yeah.
There's one more thing in here. You're like, Jake, God, one more thing? Yes.
Yeah.
There's one more thing in here. It's a 1/1 line of Espeon VMAX, Sean. Sean, do you know what this card does without looking at the text that you've got pulled up on the screen?
No, I did not know what this card did. Please.
This Pokemon is a 310 HP VMAX Psychic Pokemon. It has the ability Solar Revelation. Prevent all effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to all of your Pokemon that have energy attached. So, with something like Lost Box or something like that, with all the one prizers, the Sableye, and Arceus that accelerates energies anywhere on the field, you can basically, with this Espeon VMAX in the active, prevent Pokemon from, just getting wiped out, sniped, damaged, perfectly calculated in all these different places. And, that deck specifically, Lost Box, doesn't have a dark weakness on your Espeon as well. It doesn't have necessarily a dark counter. So that is very, very cool. Max Mindstorm 60 times, 1 Psychic, 2 Colorless. This attack does 60 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. So could be really, really interesting in other like Arceus matchups and Kyurem matchups as well. Things of that nature. Even something like Giratina, because they can, once they start using their Mirage Gate, right, they get those energies there very, very quickly, very, very fast. You can catch them off guard potentially a little bit, but not too off guard because you got to lay down that Espeon V and evolve it first.
Yeah, I think your point about the Arceus, the like opposing Arceus decks, whether that's Arceus Goodra or Arceus Kyurem, you're not going to hit for weakness in those, but the amount of energy, like after you Arceus attack and power something up, there's all of a sudden 6 energy on the field, which means that this Espeon is going to be doing 360 damage. That's nutty. That's a lot. That's like... Whew.
And we're not seeing a lot of energy recovery either, so a lot of times it's not even worth doing something like a manual retreat to get rid of energies and things like that. So it's a very, very interesting tech that worked out for a long, long time in this deck. But Sean, do you remember what Volo is?
Is it supporter?
It's a supporter. It's one that I didn't know about before looking at these lists, and probably a lot of people don't know what card I'm talking about either. It's from Lost Origin, so it's relatively new. I'll give you that. It is a supporter that says discard one of your bench Pokemon V and all attached cards. This is very, very interesting because it can do a numerous amount of things. If you've got Arceus V-Star, Flying Pikachu VMAX, Espeon VMAX, right? These Pokemon with a lot bigger energies where people sometimes could have a little bit of struggle to, you know, do a one-hit KO, especially because we talked about earlier with Giratina on that 280. You know, Radiant Gardevoir just says, hi, you can't knock me out. So you get hit by Giratina, just retreat to the bench, and then boom, use Volo, get that out of there, and you don't give up any of those prizes. So it's a very, very cool card in my opinion. And you can do the same thing with Espeon and or Flying Pikachu in that sense. Flying Pikachu being the easiest because it has free retreat.
That's fascinating. I don't think I even knew this card existed to be. I mean, I sounds like a supporter, but like it reminds me of, do you remember the Giovanni's Order card?
Yes. It has like 2 effects on it, isn't it?
Maybe, but I remember people used to use it to discard like their Dedennes or their...
Oh my gosh. Giovanni's Exile.
Yes, that's it.
Giovanni's Exile, yeah. I do remember that card.
To be frank, this is basically this is kind of a better version of Giovanni's Exile because it doesn't have any. I think the other one had like some weird stipulation of like it had to have no damage counters, or I don't know.
I think Giovanni's Exile had to have damage counters.
Yeah, it was some weird. You had to have a thing. And with this though, you don't have to have any of that. And this is a really interesting card. I don't think you play it in more than 1 or 2 of in a deck, but
no, definitely not.
I really like where Pokemon has been going with all of the different supported. Like this, Thornton, I think, had, you know, a couple of moments to shine over the weekend, or I heard. So there's a few really interesting supporters floating around right now that I think are waiting for the perfect home.
It's very interesting, Sean. But other than that, I mean, this list is not all surprising. I think we went through most, if not all of the surprises. There's a bug in my room flying around. I'm going to have to catch that sucker later because he keeps distracting me. But, Sean, we've got some other decks that we can talk about. Do you want to go over the Giratina deck?
Is it pretty standard?
It's got a little bit of mix. I kind of want to talk about it a little bit.
We'll give it a look. I mean,
this is the interesting list that has not only Giratina in it and the Comfey as well as always, but it also has a little bit of the Sableye and Cramorant. So Lost Zone box, we talked about how the one prizer box is not existent in this top 8. Well, it's looking like it's coming back to what I think people were kind of talking about in the beginning, where it's like morphing into, you know, like one thing. Giratina is just jumping in there. Giratina being the main thing, attacking for that 280, like we said. And Sean, look at this list. This list has air balloons, but it doesn't have any choice belts.
I mean, I guess they figure they can just take out whatever they need later with a Sableye, right?
Yeah, until they Volo. And anyways.
Yeah.
But this list also opting to play a Drapion V, you know, Giratina having the 4 battle VIP passes to be able to get all those Comfeys on the bench, Radiant Greninja, things like that. Also playing a one of Collapse Stadium, which I think is very interesting. Just a one of.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. So let me see here. Can't have more than 4. So if you have 5, play your discards first. Yeah, I mean, I guess the nice thing about this is in a pinch, it can act as a Volo, get something out that has damage counters on it. You don't want to give up prizes, but also takes a little bit of the wind out of Palkia's sails. So
anything to do a little bit of disruption. But, you know, like I said, playing the 4 Colress, playing the 4 Mirage Gate, we mentioned that card earlier. Not a lot of Pokemon Search outside the Battle VIP Pass, as a lot of decks I feel like we're starting to see several decks do this now, where, you know, 1 Quick Ball, 1 Ultra Ball. That's it for the Pokemon Search, besides something like Battle VIP Pass or just naturally drawing into it through Comfey, which is scary in my opinion, but that's because I've always been around for a Nest Ball or Quick Ball or Ultra Ball, and so not having them is weird.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, I don't know. I could see this being a deck where you might have like one or two games where it's just like you have a dead hand and there ain't no way out of it. Like it's turn two and all you got's a bunch of battle VIP passes, baby.
Yeah, it's just real tough, but a very cool list, I do think. But Sean, let's look at the team
Team Reggie.
Azul Grand Getamer list, the team Un list, and check out one of these to see what was going on, because I believe that there were some interesting things in here. But as you can see in here, you've got the classic Reggies. Reggie Alecki being the one opted for 3 along with Reggie Gigas in here. The Reggie Drago only using 2 of them and going both of them being the Dragon's Horde because that ability is really nice. You've got your Hisuian Heavy Ball because you could just lose if you don't have a Hisuian
Yes.
Heavy Ball. But the things that I want to talk about that maybe some people don't know are more towards the bottom. The first one being a one of Yellhorn, Sean.
Yeah.
One of Yellhorn being in this list. If you don't remember what it is an item card. Both active Pokemon are now confused. So really curious, I feel like, in a lot of these lists, especially with something like Goodra, right? That probably doesn't have a lot of Pokemon on the field because they don't need it. They'll just keep healing it all off. So you say, okay, put another Pokemon down, right? Retreat into it, manually retreat or use a switch card or something like that, which, by the way, not a lot of people are playing switch cards.
No, that's very true.
So you've got that in there. You've got a one of Pokegear, some curious one of items in my opinion. But the other one I want to mention, Sean, is an energy card. Do you know which energy card it is?
I do. It's the one that was been bugged on PTCGO.
Yes, so you haven't been able to see it probably in PTCGO, but it is Gift Energy. Gift Energy, a colorless energy card. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack on your opponent's Pokemon, draw cards until you have 7 cards from your hand. So you're a Reggie deck. You're probably losing a Pokemon every single turn because you're so small. Perfect for the Gift Energy if you've got it attached, and you can constantly get it back on with something like Reggie Gigas. So if you are in a situation to where you don't have your 2 Auroras, right, or Lightning to fill these like double colored combos for Reggie Drago, Regice, Reggie Rock, Reggie Alecki, right?
Yep.
You can use a Gift Energy instead and get some value out of using Ancient Wisdom to be able to draw into what you need, or to be able to draw into like a research or something.
Yeah. It's a really cool card. I think that casters and other people were mentioning, like, because it's been bugged, I don't think people saw nearly as much Reggie on ladder as you might have thought, and in the online tournaments as you maybe should have. So going into Salt Lake City, it's really the people who like play tested in person and went to like in-person events that had a good sense for how powerful this deck was going into this format. And I think now it's pretty obvious, right? 4 out of the
Yes.
4 or 5 out of the top 8 spots being Reggie's is like, okay, we get it. It's a good deck. It's the best single prize deck in the format. Let's be frank. So,
It is interesting, but Sean, if you could just go to Drewennetts List real quick.
Okay.
Because he had a little bit different of a list. He was not part of the testing group, I don't think, in this. But in here, opting for 3 Reggie Dragos, one being the Reggie Drago with Dragon Energy Attack, the 240 in there, but also opting for cards like Pokestop, Bruno, in this list, which are very cool. Bruno, I always love seeing Bruno in 1 prize decks because, I don't know, shuffle, draw 7 after your Pokemon gets knocked out. It's pretty doggone freaking good, especially when you're in a situation when you've got a hand that you don't want to research. Maybe you have multiple Reggie Dragos in your hand. Maybe you have multiple Ordinary Rods in your hand. Things of that nature, very important cards that you may need. So very cool. Playing 5 stadiums in Drewennetts List, though, as well. 3 Pats of the Peak and 2 Pokestops.
I wonder about the stadium counts because if people really take Reggie deck seriously, I think that the obvious counter is going to be Temple of Sinnoh. And if you can get a Temple of Sinnoh after a Marnie or a Roxanne, any of those combos, to really stick, that Temple of Sinnoh, you throw that down, you smack into them, gift energy means nothing. You don't get to draw any cards. So that is how those Roxannes and other things are going to stick. That can really mess up your day because, the deck doesn't really have a lot of draw outside of, some of the gift energy combos or what have you. So, I'll be interested to see how much you start seeing the Temple of. So for those of you who don't know, Temple of Sinnoh says all special energy attached to all Pokemon, yours and your opponent, only provide one energy, and it only provides colorless energy. And I also think it ignores all other effects of the card. So double turbos turn into singles, but also things like capture, aurora, speed energy, gift energy, they lose all their effects. They're just a random colorless energy.
I don't know how much Temple of Sinnoh actually comes up. I think people may opt more towards Collapse Stadium because I feel like, we're seeing a couple decks right here. The first two decks play things like Double Turbo. They're very important in the list. So I feel like you could see that with a couple other decks as well, where they just really, really want those special energies. And so maybe they just try to deter you by, using that Collapse Stadium to get rid of not just one Reggie from the bench discard, but knocking out their other Reggies. So then they have to get two instead of one and bump the stadium to even attack if they struggle with drawing and things like that.
Yeah, you might be right. That might be a more holistic play, but I don't know. I like Temple of Sinnoh. I think, especially in certain
think something
matchups,
like a Palkia deck would go Temple of Sinnoh for sure.
Oh yeah. It's like between Path to the Peak and Temple of Sinnoh, but like depending on your build, like if you could run both, I don't know. I just think that like people are going to start playing around with it, especially if you see more and more Reggie, because it's just a powerful deck.
It's a cheap deck.
Yep. And if you can somehow get what you need in before your opponent can get what they need and then throw a Temple of Sinnoh down, in a majority of matchups, it's going to be real annoying. So, but yeah.
It'll be very interesting, Sean. Just like, this podcast, I feel like is very interesting. Wouldn't you agree?
So interesting, Jake. So very, very interesting.
So interesting. Hopefully things, calm down a little bit for us so that we can breathe, sleep, eat. It's late right now, and I still have to edit the pod after this. But anyway, Sean, it's been an excellent cast. Hopefully I get to watch a little bit more of the next regional, the next event. I want to watch more Pokemon. I just want to watch this format. People are having a lot of fun. I've been having some fun talking about it, watching it, and I'm still excited for the next set, though, especially because the Alolan Vulpix comes in the next set, right? I don't
believe so, yeah.
remember if it's very competitive, but I like Alolan Vulpix. It's a very cute Pokemon, Sean. But we'll talk about it in the set review in pod in the future. I can't remember when that's going to be, but it's going to be soon. Anyway, Sean, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to the Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta, the Metapod, the podcast, whatever you want to call it. Have a great rest of the day. Sean now understands my joke, so it's time to say goodnight.